So today I want to tell you a story that some of you will be familiar with, and then also have a lesson from it again. So this story is from 1992, and this was when the older George Bush was president of the United States, and he was running for re-election. His vice president was Dan Quayle, and so this was in the re-election campaign, and with Dan Quayle being the vice president. He made a campaign stop in June of 1992 at a school in New Jersey, and he went there with some education officials and other things. And as part of this campaign stop, there was the news media was with him, and the cameras and news reporters and other government officials, and they went into this classroom, and Dan Quayle led a mock spelling bee where the students had words that they had been given, and then they had to go up and write them on the board and spell them correctly. Now, somebody had given Dan Quayle a card where potato was misspelled, and so on the card, the cue card that Dan Quayle had been given, it had potato spelled with an E at the end. So instead of Potato, it had an E on the end, and he didn't recognize that it was a misspelling. So when it got to the time for there was a 12-year-old boy, I think his name was William Figueroa, and when it was time for William to do the spelling, Vice President Quayle asked him to spell potato. And so he wrote it on the board correctly, Potato, and Vice President Quayle started pressuring him. He said, "Hey, why don't you spell that again? And why don't you put something on the end there?" And so this poor 12-year-old boy, with all of this pressure on him, it's the vice president of the United States and government officials and education experts and his teacher and his principal and the news media and the cameras are rolling, and basically they pressured this boy to write an E at the end, and then all clapped for him when he put the E on the end, even though it was incorrect. And anyway, that blew up and became a story. Like I said, some of you may have heard that one before. And the takeaway that most of the people had was that Dan Quayle, was not very smart, didn't know how to spell, he's an idiot or whatever. But it's actually been a vivid story for me for the different reason, which is thinking about the pressure, the pressure that can exist sometimes, peer pressure, government pressure, pressure from authorities, to try to get you to reject or deny something that you know is true, and how that can be hard. It can make you start to doubt the things that you know. I mean, that boy, he knew how to spell potato, but there was so much pressure that he succumbed to it. And so sometimes I feel like that boy, and I don't want to give in to that kind of pressure. And maybe you feel like that too. This channel's largely for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and so as members of this church, we do have beliefs that are unpopular and that we can be pressured against, and those beliefs could include, that the church is true, or belief in God. It can be belief in the Book of Mormon, that it's a true story, a real account of real people, of biblical stories and their truthfulness, of traditional values, all of these things, these opinions that we were raised in, and knew what was right and what was true. But then there's so much pressure that can exist sometimes to try to get you to turn away from that and let it go, and to doubt those things that you knew. And it can be a lot of pressure. And so anyway, my message to you is don't give in, stick with what you know is true. And it doesn't matter how much pressure there is against you. If you know it's true, stick to it. And if you've really thought it through, and if you've had, a confirmation of its truth, hold on to that, and don't, give it up and put an E at the end just because all of the experts and the vice president and the government and the teachers and the news media are all telling you that you're wrong. So, and in doing that, sometimes you might have to stand alone. And I'm going to harken back to a wonderful talk by President Thomas S. Monson when he was president, and it was the one about dare to stand alone. And he talked about some experiences in his life where he found that he had to be willing to stand alone, even if he's the only one. And one that he gave, which was vivid for him, was when he was a new recruit in the military. And it was the first weekend, and he was on the front row of a group, and it turned out that because he was a Mormon, he was the only one. He felt like he was the only one there. And the sergeant's like, "Well, what group are you?" He's like, he's a member of the church. And it turned out that there were others with him. He thought he was alone, but it turned out there were actually some others that went with him. And how glad he was that he was willing to stand alone on that. For me, with these videos, I've done a lot of research on a DNA evidence that I feel supports the Book of Mormon. And that book, that book, Face of a Nephite, is the book that I wrote that's on DNA studies and the Book of Mormon. And when I did that book, I came across research, DNA evidence that I felt is consistent with and supports the Book of Mormon. And I'm like, why is nobody talking about this? And it turns out I'm the haplogroup X stuff, Rod Meldrum had already started on, but there's a lot of additional DNA evidence as well. And I'm like, why is nobody using this? Where are the church members, the experts, the BYU academics? Why is nobody talking about this stuff? And it's like I had to do a sanity check and go back through very carefully through all of this peer-reviewed research and look at the data. And I'm like, this is actually consistent with my understanding of the Book of Mormon. And I realize I'm kind of standing alone on that, but after going back and carefully rechecking and studying through it thoroughly, it doesn't matter that if I'm alone on it, I'm confident that it's correct. And the same, I'll do some videos related to other evidences for the Book of Mormon and my interpretation of the geography of the Book of Mormon. And on some of these, I'll pretty much alone on some of these interpretations too, but it's okay. I'm confident in them. I've studied them, and as such, I'm ready to share them. And it's okay. It's okay if not everybody agrees, and it's okay even if you get some pressure against it. And I feel like I'm glad that I remember these lessons that help me to realize that, hey, sometimes you might be alone. Don't be afraid to be alone if you're confident that you're right. So that's the message for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in the content of these videos, again, please hit like and subscribe and the notification button. If you know of others who might be interested and like it too, please share it with them. And I look forward to sharing more with you. Thanks.